The Senate now has before it for final consideration House Bill number 701. The Secretary will read the bill.
In the House of Representatives, House Bill 701 by Ways and Means Committee, an act relating to the Idaho Workforce Housing Fund to establish the
Madam President.
Senator Agenbrod.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask unanimous consent that further reading of House Bill 701 be dispensed with, and the journal show it has been read the third time at length, section by section, and placed before the Senate for final consideration.
You've heard the unanimous consent request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered, and Senator Agenbrod is recognized to open debate.
Thank you, Madam President. House Bill 701 is a constituent-driven bill coming to us from the Idaho Workforce Housing Coalition. The Idaho Workforce Housing Coalition is a group of businesses, nonprofits, and associations who recognize the rapidly increasing cost of housing in our state as having a detrimental effect on Idaho's workforce. Why is this fund needed? Housing values in Idaho have increased by 75% between 2015 and 2020, and we all know what they've done since then. Across the state in communities large and small, employers are reporting housing costs as a primary factor, making it difficult for them to attract and retain employees. Our state is growing rapidly, and this pace of growth has challenges. In almost every corner of the state, young people, young families, senior citizens, and individuals are struggling to keep up with the increasing cost of housing. This bill aims to help address that problem. The money deployed through this fund will be used to provide gap financing to private and nonprofit developers to build affordable workforce housing. For these developers, obtaining the necessary funding to provide high-quality housing units for rents that are typically below market rate is a significant challenge. These developments are typically financed by using a combination of federal tax credits, private financing, and community support. It's not unusual to have a dozen funding sources for each of these projects. Once these sources are exhausted, there often exists a gap in funding that make these developments financially unfeasible, and they do not come to fruition. The Workforce Housing Fund will be administered by the Idaho Housing and Finance Association and would fill this gap, providing the last dollars needed to ensure the development moves forward. Senators, I'd like to point out a few points in the bill. Starting on line 23 through 27, there is preference given to communities who provide some form of match in kind or in dollars, so local participation is important. On lines 28 through 32, you'll note a 20% set aside for rural communities, ensuring the funding is distributed not only just in the urban areas, but throughout the state where we're experiencing these housing shortages. Lastly, a sunset of December 31st, 2026 is placed on this fund, consistent with the one-time ARPA funding deadlines. So this is one-time funding using ARPA dollars. While it is ultimately up to the legislature to appropriate money to fund through separate action initiated by JFAC, the intended funding source is the one-time $50 million investment of the state's discretionary ARPA dollars. This fund will benefit many of the Idahoans we depend on each day, the Idahoans who work in our grocery stores, restaurants, schools, healthcare facilities, farms, ranches, and the list goes on. Madam President, debate is open.
Is there further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Den Hartog.
Thank you, Madam President. Would the senator from 13 yield to an inquiry?
Will the senator from District 13 yield to a question from the senator from District 22?
Madam President, I will yield.
Senator Den Hartog.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator from 13. Do we know how much housing this is anticipated to provide, how many housing units we're looking at?
Senator Agenbrod.
Madam President, and Senator from District
22.
Peace back to you. Yes, we anticipate an average of $50,000 per unit, or doing the math here, that would provide 1,000 units of housing with this $50 million.
Thank you, Madam President.
Is there any further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Cook.
Would the good senator from 13 yield to a question, please?
Will the senator from 13 yield to a question from the senator from District 30?
Madam President, I will.
Senator Cook.
Thank you. What entities are granted the financial assistance from this fund? Do you have any examples?
Senator Egenbrod.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the whole question.
Sorry.
Senator Cook, would you restate your question, please?
Yes, thank you. What entities are granted this financial assistance from the fund? Do you have some examples of the entities?
Senator Egenbrod.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, certainly they would have to apply for the funds through the Idaho Housing and Finance Program that would be established by the program. It'd be available to nonprofit entities, for-profit entities. Some of the names of companies that have done that in the past are in the Workforce Housing Coalition, which would include the Ball Ventures, BVA. I'm just reading through the list here. Pacific Builders, the Home Company, to name a few. People that have had experience in developing this type of affordable housing, but it will also be open to those that wanted to participate beyond those that have historically done it.
Follow up, please.
Would the senator yield further? Senator Egenbrod.
Yes, I will.
Senator Cook.
You mentioned others that could apply for this grant. Are there any financial requirements that these entities must meet before they do the grant or before they're awarded the grant?
Senator Egenbrod.
Thank you, Madam President. With regard to financial requirements, and I'm not sure if you're talking about the company itself, let's talk about the projects. The projects, again, this is gap financing. So one of the conditions of, similar to the affordable housing tax credits, which are also part of a lot of these projects, these developers will be required to provide this property in the market that they're in at a rent rate that would be affordable to 80% of the area median income or lower for a period of 30 to 40 years in order to qualify for this monies, and that would also be consistent with probably other monies likely in their funding source.
One more question, please.
Will the senator yield further?
I will yield further.
Senator Cook.
So I understand the projects, but I'm interested in the entities, the businesses that apply for it. Is there any requirements for the business entity financially?
Senator Egenbrod.
Madam President, the requirements of the business entity, this would be a business structure, and generally those that I've seen always involve a bank as well. So they'd have to be financially feasible enough to be able to prove that they can provide the financing source or funding source, if it's not financing, as well as the expertise to actually get the property entitled for this type of project, as well as build and bring it to fruition.
Thank you.
Is there any further debate?
Madam President,
Senator Vick.
thank you. The senator from 13 yield to a couple more questions.
Will the senator from District 13 yield to a question from the senator from District 2?
Madam President, I will give it a shot. Yes.
Senator Vick.
Thank you, Madam President. Good Senator. I am not in this business, but I am in the home construction business and renovation business, and I remember a number of years ago when the housing market turned down significantly in a short period of time, and although it doesn't seem like that's going to happen anytime soon, I'm curious as to the risks involved with the state on projects that may be partially completed and then the builder is unable to finish, and there were a number of those in the last downturn, and I just wonder what the risks to the state are if something like that were to happen.
Senator Egenbrod.
Senator from District 2. The risk would be the same as they would be in any finance project. Now, this is the gap financing, so this is actually the last money in. So if a project were to get halfway through and fall apart, there'd be probably a pretty good chance this money from this fund wouldn't even be into the project at that point. But given the nature of development that they're building here, and building it to 80% of the area median income, it's not likely that area of the market is also going to collapse. What we generally see in a market collapse is really the market rates that are a lot higher, and if people have lower paying jobs or no job at all, it'll be difficult for them to pay those type of rents. But the 80% median income or lower typically is a very stable market, and certainly in today's market, it is well underserved.
Follow-up question?
Will the senator yield further?
I will yield.
Senator Vick.
Thank you. And you mentioned this in an earlier question. Where is this? The 80% of median income is not in this legislation that I can see. Where is that contained?
Senator Agenbrod.
Thank you, Madam President, and Senator from 2. This will be part of the financing grant program that will be administered by the Idaho Finance and Housing Association, and it'll actually be consistent with if they're using affordable tax credit dollars, which is generally the largest funding for the affordable programs across the United States. They have similar requirements in those programs as well. So it's important that the Idaho Housing and Finance administer this program to make it consistent with other programs that these developers are using. The last thing you want to do is provide a grant that actually disqualifies a piece of funding that also is necessary for the project. So they work hand in hand. Historically, Idaho's requirements have actually been more than the federal requirements. For example, the federal requirements on the affordable housing tax credit, it's a 30-year commitment to keep it at 80% median income. Idaho requires a 40-year commitment to that. So this is housing that gets built and with a long-term commitment to keep it in that affordability.
Thank you. And one more question, if I might. He's so good at answering them.
Will the senator yield further?
The senator will yield further.
Senator Vick.
So these are ARPA funds, and with any federal funds, there's got to be some strings. And maybe a revolving fund is not the appropriate terminology, but when these funds go out and then come back to be used again, do they lose those strings, or those strings stay with the fund ongoing?
Senator Agenbrod.
Madam President and Senator from 2, the idea of this fund would be that it is a revolving loan fund. Unfortunately, the Treasury Department forbids that. ARPA dollars cannot be lent in a revolving manner. So there is lobbying efforts with the Treasury and with Congress today to turn this into revolving eligibility fund. So short of getting that changed, what we're looking to do is make this, it would be called an equity grant program. So it's as close to a revolving fund as we possibly could have without being a revolving fund and fit the ARPA guidelines. That would serve a similar purpose. So any dollars that would come back into the fund would be utilized in a similar manner going forward. Now remember, we do have an expiration or a sunset on the fund itself consistent with ARPA, so we'll certainly stay within those bounds.
Thank you.
Is there any further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Din Hartog.
Thank you, Madam President, to debate the bill.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, and really appreciate the comments from the senator from 13. I think his answering the questions have answered a lot of my questions that I've had about this piece of legislation. Some of the concerns that I have still are unaddressed just because of how the legislation is drafted. If you look at line 20 of the bill, it talks about guiding principles. So we're proposing to put $50 million in a fund with the Idaho Housing and Finance Association, who I believe is a very trustworthy organization, one that we work with on a wide variety of things. They manage a lot of the bond projects for the state, and they're extraordinarily trustworthy. But we're leaving this fund with the legislation that says guiding principles. It's not, they shall do this, it shall be administered this way, it has to have these requirements. And that seems really broad and frankly, it feels a little reckless to me with $50 million and I know it's federal funding and it's the ARPA funding. So that's my first concern. My second concern is workforce housing, and I don't disagree with the sponsor of the bill, that workforce housing is a critical issue. However, it's not something we are constitutionally obligated to provide funding for. And I think we have a shortfall in what we've seen for our school facilities, and we have a constitutional obligation to work on those types of things. And I've been disappointed with some of the things that haven't moved forward on that this session. So I don't dispute the need, I don't dispute the effort. I'm just not sure that this is the right vehicle and in the right manner, and I certainly don't believe that the structure of the legislation with this particular fund has enough detail to give me any comfort that this is a place where we should be putting $50 million. Thank you, Madam President.
Is there any further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Stennett.
Thank you, Madam President. Debate the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. What the good senator said from 22 made me think about a few things that are happening in my backyard. Maybe it's more acute than some areas, probably not in some other areas, but when you think about the responsibility of the legislature, we have teachers and nurses and principals living in RVs out on the forest because they cannot get housing. And we have tried to hire staff in our schools, particularly the most difficult ones, which are specialty, special needs. And we have had to break contracts because they cannot get any housing. And at some point, it does start to break down our systems that we are constitutionally responsible for. And just even talking about economics, we're responsible for making sure that what we do here makes us economically sound as a state for the welfare and the thriving of our citizenry and for the resources that come into our coffers. And if we cannot get a workforce that can land anywhere, that can get any housing, we're closing businesses at a rapid rate. And that is our responsibility. And so I just urge you that it's been so dire in my backyard. And I keep thinking about the time that I was trying to do workforce housing this time last year and had our building burnt to the ground to try to create workforce housing. And that hasn't diminished over time. It just hasn't. And it's gotten worse. And I just hope that we can do something to make sure that we can keep people here to do the work to help our communities get back on their feet. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Madam President?
Senator Ward Engelking.
Thank you. I just want to point out that this is something lasting that we can do with ARPA funds that will have a great impact on businesses and our communities. The good senator is exactly right. We have people who are teaching, living in trailers or in campers because they can't get housing. And this just isn't in resort areas. This is in Boise, too. And I think this is a very good use of ARPA funds and will pay dividends for the state. And it'll be lasting and something that our businesses need. So I hope you can find your yes vote on this. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Winder.
Debate in favor of the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Just give you a quick example. A member of my family purchased a home in McCall about 4 years ago. It was around $350,000 at that time. They sold it a week ago for $958,000. That's what's happening to the price of housing in these areas. We need people. We need services. We need people that can work in the hospitals, can be EMTs, can be firemen, policemen, teachers. This is one effort to help them a little bit. This isn't the total answer, but it is a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Hearing none, Senator Agenbrod is recognized to close the debate.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to Senators from 2, 22, 30, 26, 18, and 20, all good and relevant comments. Senators, we made a commitment when we received the ARPA money, and remember the federal government didn't call us and ask us how much money we needed or when we needed it or for what. They sent us money. Could we send it back? Sure, but I don't know that that makes a lot of sense unless they're willing to reduce our federal income tax in Idaho so we can pay for our neighbors' projects. So we made a commitment to invest this money in long-term investments for the citizens of Idaho. And I believe that this is one of those long-term investment projects. To utilize these funds, developers will be required to make a commitment to keep the rates at that 80% of median income for 30 to 40 years after construction. That's a long-term investment. If these projects are sold, that commitment stays with the real property. The buyer has to keep them with that same agreement. This fund will not only provide an immediate impact, the 1,000 homes in the next 4 to 5 years, to Idaho's workforce housing, but will continue to benefit well into the future. I hope you can support this bill. Debate is closed.
Debate being closed, the question is, shall House Bill number 701 pass the Senate? The Secretary will call the roll.
Agenbrod, Anthem, Bayer, Blair, Burgoyne, Burtonshaw, Cook, Crabtree, Den Hartog, Grow, Guthrie, Harris, Hyder, Lakey, Lee, Lind, Lodge, Martin, Nelson, Nye, Patrick, Rice, Ricks, Riggs, Semmelroth, Souza, Stennett, Thane, Van Orden, Vick, Ward-Ingle-King, Winder, Wintrow, Woodward, Cito, Cook, Crabtree, Rice, Souza, Van Orden,
Roll call shows 26 ayes, 9 nays, 0 absent and excused, a majority having voted in the affirmative. House Bill number 701 has passed the Senate. Is there a correction to the title? Hearing none, the title is also approved, and House Bill 701 will be returned to the House of Representatives.